And therefore it's not surprising that he's also an educator, and very much a philosopher, too. And yet, despite this strong influence he has, particularly on the young generation of musicians, I think the last thing that Bill would wish to do is to create a group of young pianists who play in his style. He argues, in fact, that style, for better or for worse, eventually comes of itself, out of that mysterious interior well of creative inspiration, which I guess nourishes everybody to one degree or another. It's much more important, Evans feels, to master fundamentals, both in theory, so that you understand what you're doing, and in an active practice, developing one's musical muscles, not just technical facility, but the brain connection with the arm muscle, so to speak, developing that facility to the point where the subconscious mind can take over the basic mechanical task of playing, thus freeing the conscious to concentrate on the spontaneous creative element that distinguishes the best jazz, and I guess the best and perhaps all human activity. Now, if that sounds like nonsense to you, if you're a non-musician, let's say, you'll be familiar with this separation of jurisdictions from such common experiences as driving your car. You remember when you learn to drive, you first consciously learn the separate movements, turning the key and holding on, whatever you did. And then you gradually relegated all of that movement and all of that individually willed movement to the subconscious, which then took over the machine, and which should be made to pay the traffic tickets, I think, if we had things running right. But anyway, your subconscious eventually drives around town while your conscious mind engages in conversation or listens to the radio or that sort of thing. Now, so often we know nothing of an artist in various fields, except what he produces. Well, Phil now will introduce you to Bill Evans, the man, as well as Bill, the piano player. So here he is, chatting with his brother, Harry Evans, who himself is a music teacher in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
I think that jazz very seldom, in its true state, is presented to the average public. They do have an idea of jazz which is not quite true. But the way I feel about it is that it is the only form of art that, in the way America has created and given to the world in this century, or in the past few centuries, let's say. But I think it's more of a revival in a different form of what went on in classical music before. In other words, in the 17th century, there was a great deal of improvisation in classical music, as you know. And because of the fact that there were no electrical recording techniques or any way to permanentize or to catch music and to record it, the music was written so that it could be permanentized that way. And so slowly but surely, the writing of the music and the interpreters of the written music gave way to more and more interpretation and more syllable composition and less improvisation. And so finally, improvisation became a lost art in classical music, and we have only the composer and the interpreter. So the composer even very seldom improvised, or didn't have to, say around the late 1800s or turn of the century. But jazz, in a way, has resurrected that process, which I call the jazz process. Now, jazz, as we tend to look at it, is a style. But I feel that jazz is not so much a style as a process of making music. It's the process of making music, making 1 minute's music in 1 minute's time. Whereas when you compose, you can make 1 minute's music and take 3 months to compose 1 minute's music. And that's the only basic difference. Now, it so happens that because of historical circumstances and where jazz was born, or wherever it came from Mississippi, and American music and American culture and all, we think of jazz as a stylistic medium now, which in a way it is. But I think we must remember that in an absolute sense, jazz is more of a certain creative process of spontaneity than a style. Therefore, you might say that Chopin or Bach or Mozart or whoever improvised music, that is, was able to make music of the moment, was in a sense playing jazz. And we leave style out of it, and that's the way I feel about it in an absolute sense. I would like to say that one of the most thrilling things about jazz as a spontaneous creative process is, for instance, in recording it and later hearing oneself and being so surprised and at what has happened. And it might be interesting to note that any good teacher of composition, that is like serious classical music sort of composition, will always tell the students that the composition should sound as if it's improvised. It should have a spontaneous quality. So actually, the art of music is the art of speaking with this spontaneous quality. And that is the thrilling part of jazz, and it has more or less resurrected the art of spontaneous